Alright, so first off, thank you so much for your patience. I know I've been kind of missing in action for the past several weeks, and the truth is I just needed some time to chill out and also think more broadly about the channel and what I'm going to do moving forward. Now, there's nothing wrong or anything like that, right? I just want to chill out a little bit and also think about some other formats that I could use here on the channel, but ultimately I made the hard decision to drop back to one video a week for the foreseeable future. Those are going to be coming out on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern rather than Tuesday and Thursday. It's not that I didn't love doing 2 videos a week, it's super fun, but it's also kind of an aggressive production schedule for me, and I wanted to make sure I had margin to kind of think about other parts of the channel as well. So with that quick update out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with some pickups that are fairly recent, although a couple of weeks old at this point, but still games that I've been having fun and enjoying. And the first one that I talk about is a game that I had for the Nintendo Switch, but ultimately ended up grabbing it for PC because why not? It's an incredible game, and that is Hades. And I think most people are aware of this game given its popularity, but if you've not played it before and just got curious based on the announcement of Hades 2, Hades is a roguelike where you'll be playing as Zagreus, the son of Hades, in a bid to escape the Underworld and reach Mount Olympus. In the course of the adventure, you'll run across other Olympians to help you along the way, and on each run you'll have a newly generated series of rooms and enemies to contend with as you hack and slash your way through the story. Historically, I've not been great at roguelikes, but one of the features I like most in Hades is that there is an easy mode of sorts where you can set the game to God mode, where every time you die you'll automatically get a little bit more resistant to damage. And I love that because my perspective on playing games is that there's no real wrong way to do it, so if all you need is a little bit of extra help in a game to see it through, well, I think that's a really cool thing. Because sometimes it's not a matter of whether or not you can get good, for lack of a better term, but you might not have the time to dump an extra 20 hours into a game just to see how its story plays out, so I always appreciate when developers don't mind throwing people a bone. And that's especially helpful in Hades because it can get positively chaotic. Sometimes you get a bad roll and the enemies you encounter are not well suited to the weapon you started the run with, or maybe you load up on some health at the vendor only to find out you are one room away from a free extra health and miss out on a powerful upgrade. Thankfully, moments of frustration are few and far between in Hades anyways, and most of the time you'll find a steady and fulfilling drip of upgrades, new characters, boons, and other elements to aid you on your journey, and it is a gorgeous journey. Not just because of its sterling soundtrack and vivid presentation, but every single rough edge you might find has been sanded down to a level of polish that you just don't see that often, so I'm thrilled to be back in the Underworld striving towards Olympus. Deck performance is flawless out of the gate, and even though it's not the most technically complex game visually, artistically it absolutely shines on the deck screen, and it is well suited to quick pickup and play sessions. And speaking of quick pickup and play sessions, this next game is one that I bought purely based on nostalgia from my youth. I would not call it an exceptional game by any stretch of the imagination, but it is, again, a quick pickup and play title, mostly designed to just kill a few minutes here and there because it's not a very demanding title, and that is Jezebel Atomic. So here's the thing, I grew up in the 90s, and on those early Intel processors like the 286, 486, Pentium, and so on, I've been playing games on Windows since like 1990, and one of the earliest games I remember being on, I believe Windows 3.1 or Windows 95, was Jezebel. A game so simple you can play it in a browser today, but I spent hours and hours killing time in it. Essentially, you have atoms that are bouncing around the screen, and your goal is to create lines that slowly close off parts of the play area to trap them. And that's pretty much it. It is mind-numbingly simple, and Jezebel Atomic absolutely scratches that nostalgic itch for me. Granted, it does include a few more play modes and introduces atoms of various sizes and speeds to mix up the experience a bit, but the core gameplay is still the same. Trap the bouncing ball until you run out of lives and have to start over. It runs just fine on the deck, and I'd be surprised if it didn't, but yeah, if you're an aging millennial like I am and ever found yourself trying to remember that weird game you used to kill time with in between chat sessions on AIM or ICQ, Atomic might be worth a look at $5.99, but it is definitely worth it if you can catch it on sale. And next up, while we're talking about games that released just forever ago, this next one is not the original, but rather it is part of the reimagining in the modern age, but still about a decade old at this point, or very nearly so. And it's a game that I always wanted to finish because I loved the original when it came out in 2013, but I just never got around to playing its successors, and that would be Rise of the Tomb Raider 20-Year Celebration Edition. And again, I beat the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot years ago and loved it, and I have no doubt that Rise of the Tomb Raider and Shadow of the Tomb Raider are great too, but I just never got around to them for whatever reason. So when I saw it was on sale, I went ahead and grabbed Rise because I'm hopeful that I can finally get back on track to wrapping up the modern, or, well, more modern trilogy. I'm not like a massive Tomb Raider fan and only ever played the original on PC since I grew up a Nintendo kid for the most part. So when the reboot started in 2013, it seemed like a good time to jump in, and now that I think about it, 2013 was a great time for big, beefy single-player prestige games like this, considering we also got BioShock Infinite and The Last of Us in that same year. And after firing it up on the deck, it felt great to get back into the groove of the 2013 original. The premise is that Lara is venturing into Siberia to find a legendary city while facing down an organization called Trinity who are also looking to unearth the hidden city's promise of immortality. It kicks off with a big snowy set piece, and you'll be raiding literal tombs in no time at all. And despite the fact that this game is nearly a decade old at this point, it's still absolutely stunning, and I'm really looking forward to spending more time with this one. Visuals aside, everything in these games just feels completely polished, and while I don't know if the story's going to resonate with me just yet, Lara's particular brand of exploration, puzzle solving, combat, and progression is exactly the sort of game that grabs my attention quick and typically keeps me hooked. It doesn't quite hit 60 FPS at the very high graphics setting, but after backing it down a little bit to medium, it still looked incredibly sharp on the Steam Deck and tended to stay at or above 60 after the change. It's thrilling from the jump, and considering I'm way overdue to wrap this one up, I figure this will be a fun 15 to 20 hour adventure, and whenever I do roll credits, I'll go ahead and move on to Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And moving on to a different kind of thrilling, I'm pretty sure at this point I'm just going to end up buying the entire Puppet Combo catalog, because after having such a great time with Bloodwash a few weeks ago, I decided, you know what, let's go ahead and roll the dice on another one of their games, so I went ahead and grabbed Rewind or Die. In Rewind or Die, you'll be working as a video store clerk at Video To Go. As you get ready to start your shift, you'll switch characters at least once to get the story rolling and give you a glimpse of the horrors that you'll be facing. And as someone who grew up on a steady diet of Blockbuster and Kevin Smith's early work, I was really pumped to see what was going to go down in this one. It's similar to Bloodwash in that you'll be squaring off against another psychotic killer, but mechanically it's a little bit different. Bloodwash mostly had you walking around creepy environments, picking up clues, and piecing together larger narrative, without a whole lot else save for some environmental collectibles until you got to the final act. But Rewind or Die ups the ante with some more complex puzzles, some fun mini-games fulfilling your duties as a store clerk, and some thrilling chase sequences. I will say that one of them got a little bit tedious as the routes to escape your pursuer were really complex, but it mostly does a great job at keeping tensions high. Deck performance is naturally rock solid in the visuals department, and Rewind or Die does let you disable that VHS filter if you want, but I mean, for a game like this I feel like it's pretty much a must that you leave that kind of filter enabled. Now the controls were a little finicky to get working because it doesn't have native controller support, so I had to intentionally map the action and crouch buttons and also drop the analog sensitivity a little bit for the right stick so I could look more smoothly. But putting aside that minor complaint, it's still a fun little horror romp, and it feels like these games just keep getting better, which actually makes total sense because this game did come out 3 years after Bloodwash was released. All in all, I'd say it's an easy recommendation if your horror tastes gravitate to the low poly variety like mine do. And finally, speaking of throwbacks to simpler times in gaming, this next one is a game that I did already have on the Nintendo Switch, did not get around to finishing it, but whenever I saw it was on sale, I figured I would go ahead and grab it, mostly in preparation for Sea of Stars, and of course, that is The Messenger. And again, I mentioned this during the games dropping in August video because I knew that the prequel Sea of Stars was on the way, and while that looks to be a gorgeous 16-bit RPG I'd love to explore, I don't want to explore it before I get the full story by working through The Messenger. And because I'm a big fan of 8 and 16-bit platformers anyways, I figured now was as good a time as any to dust this one off my backlog. The Messenger is a side-scrolling action platformer that takes big inspiration from Ninja Gaiden. And even if you didn't grow up in the 8-bit era, it's still an easy game to get into thanks to a lot of modern conveniences, so even if you only played throwback titles like Shovel Knight or Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, you will feel right at home here. As an unnamed ninja, your village mythos involved the prophecy of a Western hero who will rise up to save them from the Demon King. Well, the prophecy begins in short order, and you'll be appointed as the titular messenger who has to deliver a scroll to the top of a mountain. Along the way, you'll meet more characters to flesh out the story, including a shopkeeper who is incredibly endearing and chatty, and also a demon named Quarble who will save you from death, albeit at the expense of some of your loot since you kind of owe him it all. I actually thought this was a pretty clever mechanic, and narratively it makes a lot more sense than the retro concept of just having a certain number of lives that you can burn through until you hit a game over screen. At face value, it's an action-packed platformer with engaging boss battles and a satisfying sense of progression as you start adding more traversal and attack options to your repertoire. But deeper into the game, it takes a little bit of a turn that I won't spoil for you since sadly I had it spoiled for me, but suffice it to say, if you grew up playing games in the early 90s, you're going to be in for a real treat here. It plays great on the deck and is one of the few games I played recently that really let me put the D-pad through its paces. Movement is tight and responsive, and games like this will let you squeeze out particularly long play sessions considering the graphics aren't too taxing. So if you're excited for what you've seen of Sea of Stars so far, now's probably a good time to check out The Messenger to get a better look at the world these games are sharing. I know I certainly will. Alright, and that's it for this one. Just wanted to have some fun going over some recent pickups that I've grabbed and have been playing over the month of August, as I've kind of had a short leave of absence, as it were. But hey, what about you? Have you grabbed anything particularly thrilling lately? If so, I would love to hear about it. Please let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for your time, and especially your understanding, again, as I took a quick break to just kind of recharge the batteries a bit. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.